But let's start with the gag order because you're busting in on that, and I've got all the documents pulled up here, guys. It's on Idaho cases of interest. So right over here, this was the original gag order, correct? So the non-dissemination order.
Yes.
So do you want to walk people about what to you stood out about this order? I think the first thing that I brought up, which I think something that you brought up, which is the gag order applies to parties involved. I think the first thing that people really misunderstood was they thought this meant like the media couldn't cover this case. And I'm like, no, obviously not. They cannot silence my free speech or yours, Andrea, on this. But they can tell investigators, law enforcement, attorneys, and agents of attorneys not to make extrajudicial statements. So
yeah, and the other common misconception that people had was that, oh, this means that like the court file, the PC affidavit, it's gonna, not going to be released. The court file is not going to be accessible, and none of that is the case. There are very, very strong First Amendment protections for access to court records in the United States. Gag orders, are very, very highly disfavored. They're supposed to be targeted. They're supposed to be narrow. They're supposed to be as clear and unambiguous as possible. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where I see the problems with this gag order start to appear right off the very bat, is because who it applies to, the parties, including investigators, law enforcement personnel, attorneys, and agents. Law enforcement personnel, which ones? Which law enforcement personnel? Does this apply to the officers who raided the house in Pennsylvania? Does this apply to the officers in Indiana who stopped the car? Does this apply to the police officers who circled, over the parents' home the night that they were doing the raid? That's not clear. And when it's not clear, you got a big problem with a gag order, because a gag order needs to be clear. So that jumped out at me right off the bat as being really potentially problematic in terms of being able to realistically enforce this thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's saying that, hey, this is a gag order that was put out that, yes, I mean, you understand the intent, you understand what was driving it, but it's not realistically enforceable. And perhaps that's why the initial gag order got updated, right? Because this was the update to it. And there's much more detail here. To me, when I look through this particular gag order, I saw first of all, the pooled media, which I want to talk to you about. But a lot of the restrictions, it seems like it's going to be pretty restricted in the courtroom. Now, things like, having to follow the standard the COVID precautions, security screening, cell phones turned off, that's normal. But not allowing live casting, transmitting, or streaming from the courtroom. There's two separate areas under 3 media coverage B and C, where it specifically calls out that live broadcasting, transmitting, and streaming is not allowed. Mm-hmm. What did you think about that? Because I have some people saying, hey, there's a lawsuit waiting to happen on this, C-SPAN, or maybe Court TV, or maybe even Law and Cuck. Maybe one of these people that have a financial interest, a huge financial interest, are going to say, look, we got to live stream this. So, I mean, do you think that these rules are going to stand in the Second Amendment order for the actual trial, or do you think this is just a preliminary thing at this point?
It's a good question. It's of course hard to say until the trial actually happens. My impression of what they're trying to accomplish with that provision is basically just put a delay on the stream. They're allowing the feed, they're allowing the cameras in the pooled feed, but they don't want it broadcast live. And I don't know why. It may be because they want to be just sensitive to the risk that one of the cameras could violate one of those restrictions. They accidentally catch the jury. They look at something on defense counsel table. And so, to have the opportunity to not have that go out on the broadcast before, it's too late. They may be anticipating courtroom misconduct, if nothing that I have seen so far leads me to believe that that's going to be a concern. But of course, you never know. We've had like 1 day, 2 minutes in trial, and trials can get crazy. So,
sure. I mean, well, hold on. If there was going to be courtroom misconduct, because you've been in the courtroom, you're a public defender. Who's going to be the person misbehaving? Is it the defendant? Is it the people who are the victim's family? Is it the public? Who are the naughty people? Who's gonna misbehave in this? Who are they the most worried about in your professional experience?
I'm not jumping on that grenade, Andrew.
You're not
jumping on that grenade. No, I mean the issue is that emotions are going to run high, and you just don't know what could happen. And I'm not trying to be like insensitive by suggesting, the victims' families are going to misbehave or anything like that. No, I don't think they will. I think they'll be very, very respectful of the process. But these are just all risks that I think the court is going to be considering, the fact that things can happen.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing I was thinking might get crazy here is the folks that, are not permitted access to the courtroom, because obviously they're limiting it to victim's family, defendant, attorneys, very immediate circle, which is normal with first come, first serve seats, which probably are going to be taken by extraordinarily, how should I put this? Either news networks that are, sending their lackeys to go sit there and do it, which I think is going to be a significant amount. The Geraldos of the world, they're going to get their seats saved, much like the Casey Anthony trial, because I was covering that. They're going to have their seats saved, but there's going to be people that really want to get in and they don't get in. And those are the folks that I think could cause a scene.
Well, and there's so many factors here too. This is a college town. They have a law school there. There's educational interest for people going there. There's going to be people who were members of Sigma Chi, people who were members of the I forget the sorority that the girls were in. They're going to want to be there. I mean, there's potentially going to be an awful lot of people, like you're saying, that have an interest in being present for it. I'm about 2 hours from Moscow myself. I'm, hoping if I can get over there for some of it, that I'll be able to do that.
That would be great. Yeah, but I mean, once again, I'm sure like you have a realistic expectation that there's going to be everyone, their mother, and their cats.
Absolutely.
there for that case. Speaking of everybody and their mother, did have some messages on locals. C3 Metals and a $1 tip says they took away the pussy on Rumble. Yes, it's now a like button, so just smash it. Ben SC said a $1 said, good evening, Regal Mindset. Yes, that is my drinking stream Asian name when I'm late night. So yes, I changed back to Legal Mindset. We're good now. And then over here on YouTube, SS, welcome to BLM. Welcome to the Base Legal Mindset. Actually, the Emojis Discord. So welcome. Thank you very much. And Xander's Rant says, remember that time Andrea came in right when Jeff was saying something like, everyone dreams of a lawyer like them, and Nick had to ask him to clarify. Wait, what?
I don't remember that.
I was going to say, I don't remember this either. And what is Jeff doing talking about people's dreams? I don't. That's a little weird, but no, we've done a lot of shit on Nick's stream. So, I mean, you're going to have to be specific. Like, please restate. All right, so like the gag order has been updated at least once, or was it twice? There was also a stipulation, but I believe the stipulation was kind of very short. Let me show that.
So I think there's two things we're talking about. The gag order itself, I think, is still the original, but then they did this additional order that's basically media conduct or whatever.
Yes.
So the gag order itself, they did come in and, add these kind of legal disclaimers, which I thought was kind of, I don't know, clever, I guess. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Of course, as you know, the law is the law. It doesn't matter if you put it in the paperwork or not. But it does kind of suggest that they're doing that at least for purposes of informing the media, informing the public that this is why, these decisions are being made.
Right. And I believe these are and you talked about the general susness of gag orders on your Twitter. Can you go a little bit deeper into that? Like, why should we look at gag orders and say, okay, off rip, like as a basis under the Fourth Amendment, they're suspect? Why should we perceive them that way?
Well, because the idea is that, we're a free speech based country. We follow the principle that more speech is better, and that if you don't like speech, you go out and argue with it. You don't just shut it up. And so gag orders they're a prior restraint. They're shutting you up before you have the opportunity to express yourself. And so there's just a very long history and tradition of that kind of thing being really, really disfavored. So, yes, they do have the ability to do it in some circumstances like this, where it is limited to certain people, where it's furthering a compelling government interest, which in this case is ensuring that due process is afforded to this guy. They don't want to have to try him over and over and over again because stuff is getting blown up, in the public record, and they can't get a jury, or the jury gets exposed to bad information, or just whatever.
Wouldn't a gag order though be? I mean, in this case particularly, isn't the intent here really to protect Brian Kohberger? Because
Yes.
I mean, in this case, I've already seen police. In fact, before the gag order came down, there were police saying, we believe we've got the guy, and I believe I even heard the words that I think this guy is guilty. We have enough evidence to prove him guilty, or I think this guy is guilty. Which, of course, look. Law enforcement is the one filing the charging documents. I hope they would have confidence in what they're filing, but
yes.
The media is constantly looking for people to affirm the guilt of the individual, and going to law enforcement, and coming back and getting those statements as the culpability. It feels like they're always getting a little bit more of drip drop of things they've discovered and they've not discovered. So to me, I think a gag order is good, because the police can finally say instead, hey, we've got to do this in a court of law. We can only inform you on this case as it updates in the court, and stop those statements which they're giving to media across the United States. And then the stupid assholes like us clip it, and it goes viral on social media, and even more people see it around the world. And then we've already tried this case. We've tried this case, 2 days after this guy's arrested.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, this is clearly for his benefit more than anybody else's. He is going to exercise his right to remain silent, and there is really no other advisable course of action for him. Everything that we've seen from him so far does seem to indicate he's rational. Okay, may not be everything that we would hope a human being would be. Time will tell, but he doesn't seem psychotic or delusional or anything like that. So he's capable of acting in his rational self-interest, and his rational self-interest is shut the fuck up and not say anything until the trial is able to play its way out. So it really puts them in this disparate situation